The Mafia boss thought a quiet accountant couldn't fight, until she deleted his entire life. Park Ji-sung thought he was hiring a mouse to hide his billions. He saw a quiet girl in a gray suit who was good with numbers. He didn't realize that by giving her access to his black ledger, he was handing her the detonator to his entire empire. Because this quiet accountant didn't come for a paycheck, she came to delete the man who deleted her father. Before we reveal the moment the ghost of Singapore realizes his bank accounts are hitting zero while he's surrounded by enemies, make sure you've secured your spot in our inner circle by subscribing. Only the top 1% of our viewers stay to see how the weakest person in the room becomes the deadliest. Now, tell me in the comments, if you had the power to bankrupt a monster with one click, would you do it immediately, or would you toy with him first? Like this video, and let's enter the digital shadows. Singapore is a city-state built on data and discipline. For Suri Han, it was the perfect place to hide. To the world, she was a high-level forensic auditor with a boring social life and a talent for finding missing cents. To the Golden Crane Syndicate, she was the perfect ghost accountant, someone to launder their blood money through Singapore's pristine banking systems without asking questions. Park Ji-sung, the syndicate's cold-blooded enforcer, took one look at Suri and saw a tool. He moved her into a high-security suite in the Marina Bay Sands district, surrounding her with guards and encrypted servers. He thought he had her trapped. What he didn't know was that Suri had been tracing the Golden Crane for 10 years. She knew the rhythm of their transactions better than her own heartbeat. As she sat in that glass-walled office, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard, she wasn't just cleaning the books. She was planting a logic bomb. One night, as Ji-sung stood over her shoulder, demanding she authorize a $500 million transfer to a shell company in the Caymans, Suri didn't flinch. She hit the enter key with a faint, chilling smile. She hadn't just moved the money, she had redirected it to the International Crime Bureau, attached to a 400-page confession signed with Ji-sung's digital thumbprint. Ji-sung's phone didn't just buzz, it screamed with alerts. In that heartbeat, the quiet accountant turned to look at the most feared man in Asia and said the 5 words that would end his life: "Your balance is now zero." The air-conditioned chill of the Marina Bay suite was usually silent, save for the soft, expensive hum of the server racks. But tonight, that silence was broken by the frantic, rhythmic tapping of Suri's mechanical keyboard. Park Ji-sung stood behind her, his shadow looming over the mahogany desk like a shroud. He leaned in, the scent of expensive cologne and cold iron radiating from his suit. "The transfer, Suri. Do it now. The Hong Kong buyers are losing patience." Suri's fingers hovered over the enter key. She didn't look like a threat. In her oversized glasses and plain gray blazer, she looked like someone who had spent her life apologizing for taking up space. "Are you sure, Mr. Park?" she asked, her voice a quiet, melodic whisper. "Once this goes through, there's no coming back. The digital footprint will be permanent." "I didn't hire you for your caution," Ji-sung spat, tapping his gold watch. "I hired you because you're a ghost. Now, push the button." Suri obeyed. She hit the key with a soft click. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, every screen in the room, the wall-mounted monitors, the tablets held by the 4 guards at the door, and the smartphone in Ji-sung's pocket, turned a blinding, clinical white. A single line of red text appeared on Ji-sung's phone: "Account status, liquidated." "What is this?" Ji-sung demanded, snatching his phone. He swiped frantically, trying to access his private vault. "Suri, what did you do?" "I found the leak, Mr. Park," she said, slowly turning her chair to face him. She wasn't slouching anymore. It wasn't a mistake in the books. It was the man holding them. At the door, the lead guard, a mountain of a man named Chen, looked at his own device. His eyes widened. "Sir, my offshore retainer. It's gone. The balance is zero." "Mine too," another guard growled, his hand drifting from his holster to his side. The professional loyalty that had held the room together for years began to dissolve in real time. These men didn't work for the Golden Crane out of respect, they worked for the high-digit wire transfers that hit their accounts every Friday. "I'll pay you double," Ji-sung roared, sensing the predatory shift in the room. "Just get her to fix it." "With what, Ji-sung?" Suri asked, her voice cutting through his panic like a scalpel. You didn't just lose your personal wealth. I've triggered a total loss protocol. Every asset tied to your biometric ID has been seized by the Monetary Authority of Singapore as part of a global money laundering sting. You couldn't even pay for the coffee on your desk right now. Chen stepped forward, his face a mask of cold fury. He didn't look at Suri. He looked at the man who suddenly owed him 3 years of blood money that no longer existed. You promised us we'd be set for life, boss, Chen hissed, the boss sounding like a curse. Ji-sung backed away, hitting the floor-to-ceiling glass. Below them, Singapore glittered like a jewel he no longer owned. He looked at Suri, the quiet mouse who had just stripped him naked in front of his own wolves. For the first time in his life, the most feared man in the city-state realized he was standing in a room full of hungry men, and he was the only thing left on the menu. The transition from the icy, digital death of the penthouse to the memory of 15 years ago felt like falling into a vat of black ink. Before the glass towers of Singapore, there was a cramped, paper-filled office in a back alley of Seoul. Suri's father, Han Dae-young, had been the man who kept the city's secrets, not because he was corrupt, but because he was too honest to look away from the numbers. A young Ji-sung, then just a mid-level enforcer with cold eyes and an appetite for chaos, had walked into that office. He wasn't there for an audit, he was there for an erasure. Mr. Han, Ji-sung had said, his voice a low, rhythmic threat that vibrated through the thin walls. The Golden Crane doesn't like discrepancies. We like balance. And you found $1 billion hole that doesn't exist. Amara, Suri back then, was hiding under the heavy oak desk, her fingers tracing the wood grain as she listened to the sound of her father's fountain pen scratching against a ledger. It does exist, Ji-sung, her father had replied, his voice steady despite the sweat she could smell on his skin. This isn't just money. It's a trail of blood. You're not just moving funds, you're moving the evidence of 3 murders. I can't balance this. I won't. Under the desk, Suri had heard the sound of a chair scraping back. Then, a wet, heavy thud, the sound of a man's life being reduced to a zero balance. She had watched, through the gap in the desk's modesty panel, as her father's ledger was soaked in red. Ji-sung hadn't just killed him. He had deleted him. He burned the office, destroyed the hard drives, and ensured that Han Dae-young was remembered only as a disgraced accountant who took his own life after a failed embezzlement scheme. The memory snapped back to the present. Suri stood in the Marina Bay suite, her hands resting on the very ledger she had spent 15 years reconstructing from the digital fragments of the dark web. My father told you that blood leaves a trail in the numbers, Ji-sung, Suri said, her eyes boring into him. You thought by killing him, you broke the chain. But you only made the audit permanent. Ji-sung stared at her, the realization sinking in that he hadn't hired a stranger. He had hired a legacy. He looked at his guards, who were now closing the circle around him, their eyes cold and calculating. I'm not the one being audited tonight, Mr. Park, Suri whispered, her hand moving to the kill switch on her laptop. I'm just the one signing the final report. The silence in the penthouse was shattered by the metallic shick of a blade. Ji-sung, driven by a cornered animal's instinct, lunged across the mahogany desk. He didn't care about the money anymore, he wanted to erase the ghost that was haunting him. He slammed Suri against the glass wall, the cold barrel of a suppressed pistol pressed hard under her chin. You think a few zeros on a screen make you the boss? He hissed, his breath hot and ragged. I'll kill you, take your hard drives, and hire 10 more mice like you to fix this. Suri didn't struggle. She didn't even blink. You could, she said, her voice eerily calm despite the steel against her throat. But tell me, Mr. Park, how do you plan on opening the floor safe in the bedroom? Ji-sung froze. That safe contained his black exit kit, a clean passport, $5 million in untraceable diamonds, and the physical encryption key to his private jet waiting at Sealtar Airport. I have the biometric override, Ji-sung growled. My thumbprint, my retina. I updated the firmware 10 minutes ago, Suri countered. She gestured with her eyes toward the monitors. A code was scrolling in an infinite loop, a custom 256-bit encryption. It's no longer looking for your pulse. It's looking for a heartbeat sync. Specifically, mine. I've tethered the vault's locking mechanism to my own vitals via the smartwatch I'm wearing. If my heart stops, or even if my blood pressure spikes too high from, let's say, a struggle, the safe enters a permanent deadlock state. Ji-sung's finger trembled on the trigger. He looked at the guards, who were watching him with the detached interest of vultures waiting for a carcass to stop moving. If the safe deadlocks, Suri continued, the internal thermite charge ignites. The diamonds melt. The passport burns. And you become just another nameless criminal trapped in a city that is currently screaming your name to every police precinct from Jurong to Changi. Ji-sung felt the sweat slicking his palms. He was a man who understood leverage, and for the first time, he realized he wasn't holding any. He was holding a girl, but she was holding his life in a digital cage. What do you want? He rasped, slowly lowering the weapon. I want what you took from my father, Suri said, straightening her blazer. I want the full confession. Not just yours. I want the names of the board members of the Golden Crane. You're going to help me audit the entire syndicate, or you're going to stay in this room until the sirens arrive. The heavy silence of the penthouse was shattered not by a sound, but by the sudden, violent death of the lights. The Marina Bay skyline, usually a glittering sea of neon, vanished as the suite's smart glass automatically switched to opaque. The Golden Crane Syndicate had officially cut their losses. They weren't sending a negotiator, they were sending a cleanup crew. They're here, Suri whispered. In the pitch black, she didn't panic. She tapped a command into her tablet, the screen's a muffled thud echoed from the hallway, the sound of a breach charge. 4 men in tactical gear, wearing night vision goggles, swarmed through the entrance. They moved with the terrifying precision of professionals. Sector 1 clear, the lead hitman whispered into his comms. Suri hit a sequence. Suddenly, the suite's high-fidelity audio system roared to life, blasting a chaotic, high-frequency white noise that scrambled the hitman's tactical headsets. At the same time, she triggered the smart lighting's emergency strobe mode. The room erupted into a blinding, deafening nightmare. The mercenaries, reliant on their light-amplifying night vision, were instantly blinded by the strobe. They tore the goggles off, stumbling into the furniture. Now, Suri commanded. She didn't tell Ji-sung to shoot. Instead, she manipulated the climate control. The high-pressure fire suppression system engaged, but instead of water, it released a dense, localized fog of nitrogen, dropping the room's temperature and visibility to near zero in seconds. In the chaos, the hitmen couldn't find their targets, but Suri's tablet showed her exactly where they were via the floor's pressure-sensitive sensors. 12 o'clock, behind the sofa, she directed Ji-sung. Shoot. Ji-sung fired into the fog. A cry of pain followed. 2 more by the dining table, Suri added, her voice as calm as a GPS navigator. She triggered the kitchen's automated service droids, heavy, stainless steel units, to roll out from their docks at full speed. They slammed into the shins of the remaining mercenaries with the force of a moving car. I'm not just an accountant, Mr. Park, Suri said as the last hitman was pinned against the wall by a malfunctioning heavy-duty privacy screen she had slammed shut. I'm the ghost in your machine. And tonight, the machine is hungry. The nitrogen fog began to settle, clinging to the marble floors like a dying ghost. In the eerie silence of the darkened penthouse, the only sound was the heavy, ragged breathing of Ji-sung and the distant, rhythmic clicking of a cooling server. Ji-sung slumped against the kitchen island, his custom-tailored suit torn and stained with soot. He looked at the bodies of the hitmen, then at the quiet girl who had just dismantled a professional tactical team using nothing but a tablet. How? He rasped. The syndicate spent millions to erase our tracks. We changed the names, the banks, even the continent. How did you find me in a city of 6 million people? Suri didn't look up from her screen. She swiped a finger, and a grainy, scanned image of a 15-year-old ledger appeared on the wall monitor, glowing like an ancient scroll. You're a killer, Ji-sung, but you were never an artist, she said. When you deleted my father, you took his master ledger to prove to the Golden Crane that the trail was dead. You thought you were being thorough when you altered the final balance to hide the billion-dollar hole. She zoomed in on a single line of figures. But you made a mistake. You're a man of habits. When you forced the numbers to balance, you used a rounding sequence that favored the number 7. Every time you manipulated a decimal point, you rounded to a 7. It's a psychological tell, a digital fingerprint. Ji-sung stared at the screen. A rounding error? You found me because of a few cents? It wasn't just the cents, Suri countered, her voice sharpening. It was the 7 cents discrepancy that appeared in every shell company you've touched since 2011. You thought it was invisible. But to a forensic auditor, that 7 was a flare in a dark sky. She tapped a final key. I wrote an algorithm to scan every banking transaction in Singapore's dark pools for that specific rounding pattern. It took 3 years to hit, but 6 months ago, a $500 million transfer to a Marina Bay holding company ticked that same 7 cents box. You didn't just lead me to this room, Ji-sung. You invited me. Ji-sung looked at his hands, the hands that had taken so many lives, and realized they had been betrayed by something as small as a single digit. He hadn't been hunted by a ghost, he had been hunted by a math problem he wasn't smart enough to solve. The billion-dollar error wasn't the money you stole, Suri whispered, stepping into the light of a monitor. It was thinking that an accountant's daughter would ever forget the value of a single cent. The digital world is a shark tank, and Suri had just spilled a gallon of blood into the water. By zeroing out Ji-sung's accounts, she hadn't just crippled him, she had broadcast his weakness to every predator in Southeast Asia. On the dark web, the zero balance alert on the Golden Crane's primary accounts acted like a dinner bell. Rival syndicates, the triads from the north and the cartels from the south, realized the Desert Viper was no longer protected by his billions. He was just a man in a glass cage. We have to move, Ji-sung hissed, his eyes darting to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Golden Crane isn't the only one who wants me dead. If I'm worth nothing, I'm worth everything to the men I've stepped on to get here. As if on cue, the distant whir of high-performance helicopter blades began to vibrate through the reinforced glass. The elevators are locked down, Suri said, her fingers blurring across her tablet. But they aren't coming from the ground. Look. 2 sleek, blacked-out choppers banked over the Marina Bay sands, their searchlights cutting through the humid Singapore night. These weren't police, they were private contractors hired by the Silver Dragon Tong. They're going to breach the roof, Ji-sung growled, checking his last magazine. Suri, if you don't unlock that safe now, we're both corpses. I need those diamonds to buy our way out of this city. The diamonds won't buy you a second of time if the roof collapses, Suri countered. She wasn't looking at the helicopters, she was looking at the building's structural blueprints. The Silver Dragons use kinetic impactors. They don't blow the door, they vibrate the seals until the glass shatters. A deafening thrum shook the suite, a low-frequency sonic pulse that made the fine crystal on the table explode. The Singapore siege had begun. The rival syndicate was using industrial-grade sonic oscillators to bypass the suite's physical defenses. Stay away from the windows. Suri shouted over the rising roar. She didn't reach for a gun. Instead, she tapped into the building's central maintenance system. If the rivals wanted to use physics, she would give them a lesson in fluid dynamics. She triggered the rooftop infinity pool's emergency drainage system. Thousands of gallons of water began to flood into the maintenance shafts, creating a massive, shifting counterweight that threw the building's center of gravity off just enough to disrupt the attacker's sonic aim. The building is tilting. Ji-sung yelled, grabbing a pillar for support. It's compensating, Suri corrected, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. And while they're busy trying to stabilize their landing, we're taking the one exit they haven't monitored, the automated trash compactor chute. It's a straight drop to the vacuum-sealed basement. The trash chute was a vertical blur of stainless steel and darkness, ending in a pressurized pneumatic cushion that knocked the wind out of Ji-sung. They scrambled out into the sterile, underground corridors of the building's waste management level, just as the sound of the rooftop explosions muffled above. They're on the ground, Ji-sung hissed, checking his weapon's sight. I can hear their comms. They've got Black Ops SUVs circling the block. We won't make it 2 blocks in a stolen car. We aren't going to outrun them with horsepower, Suri said, her fingers already flying across her tablet as they sprinted toward a nondescript delivery van. We're going to outrun them with inflation. As Ji-sung floored the accelerator, weaving the van through the neon-soaked curves of the esplanade, 3 black SUVs screeched onto their tail. Muzzle flashes flickered from the lead vehicle's windows, bullets thudding into the van's rear doors. Suri. Do something. Ji-sung roared as a bullet shattered the side mirror. I am, she replied, her face ghostly in the tablet's glow. The Silver Dragon Tong runs their entire operation on private, stablecoin crypto wallets to avoid Singapore's banking trail. I just found their liquidity pool. She didn't just hack them, she executed a flash crash algorithm. By using the Golden Crane's remaining ghost servers, she flooded the Silver Dragon's private exchange with millions of sell orders in a microsecond. What is that supposed to do? Ji-sung yelled, swerving to avoid a bus. Wait for it, Suri whispered. Behind them, the lead SUV suddenly swerved, its tires screeching as it slammed into a concrete barrier. The second SUV slowed down, the driver visibly distracted by his dashboard tablet. Their tactical gear is biometric, Suri explained, a cold edge to her voice. The smart locks on their weapon racks, the fuel injection systems in their custom SUVs, even the encrypted comms they're using, it's all tied to their operational wallets. I just crashed the value of their currency to zero. In the eyes of their automated systems, they're bankrupt. The cars are entering repo lock mode. One by one, the chasing vehicles began to shudder and stall as their internal computers, sensing a total loss of collateral, engaged their anti-theft lockdowns. The mercenaries were literally locked inside their own high-tech coffins, their weapons stuck in electronic holsters that no longer recognized their insolvent owners. Ji-sung looked at the rearview mirror in disbelief. The most feared hitmen in the city were now sitting ducks, trapped by a girl with a Wi-Fi connection. You didn't just stop them, Ji-sung realized, his voice trembling. You deleted their ability to fight. Money is just a story we all agree on, Mr. Park, Suri said, closing the laptop lid with a definitive snap. I just decided their story was over. The Sealtar private airfield was a desolate stretch of asphalt under the oppressive humidity of the Singaporean night. The rain had finally begun to fall, a thick, tropical downpour that turned the runway lights into smeared halos of orange and blue. Ji-sung's sleek, silver Gulfstream sat idling on the tarmac, its engines a low, impatient whine. This was the exit. The black box safe in the jet's cabin held the diamonds, the physical keys, and the escape route to a non-extradition territory. They sprinted across the wet tarmac, the sounds of distant sirens finally catching up to them. Ji-sung slammed his hand against the jet's external biometric panel. Access denied. Secondary authentication required. What? Ji-sung roared, punching the casing. Suri, what did you do now? I'm at the door. Suri stood a few feet back, her hair plastered to her forehead, her eyes reflecting the cold light of the hangar. She wasn't holding a tablet anymore. She was holding the small, silver flash drive she had recovered from the penthouse safe. I didn't do this, Ji-sung, she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. Your own board did. When you went off-grid at Marina Bay, the Syndicate initiated the Dead Hand Protocol. The only way to unlock this aircraft is to upload a legacy proof, a piece of data so secret it serves as a digital DNA match for the owner. Ji-sung's face went pale. He knew exactly what the legacy proof was. It wasn't a password or a thumbprint. It was the undeleted file. The one thing he had kept as collateral against the Syndicate's board members, the original, unedited footage of the night Han Dae-young died. I can't, Ji-sung whispered. If I give you that, I'm giving you the rope to hang me. The footage shows everything. It shows I didn't just follow orders, it shows I enjoyed it. Then you stay here, Suri said, gesturing to the perimeter fence where the headlights of the first police interceptors were appearing. The Desert Viper can explain to the Singapore Internal Security Department why he has no money, no guards, and a plane he can't fly. Ji-sung looked at the sirens, then at the girl who had systematically dismantled his life with nothing but logic. With a shaky hand, he reached into a hidden compartment in his watch and pulled out a microscopic microSD card. You think this is justice? He spat, shoving the card toward her. Watching your father beg for his life? It won't bring him back, Suri. It'll just make you as cold as I am. Suri took the card. She didn't hesitate. She inserted it into the jet's terminal. The screen flickered. A grainy, high-angle video began to play. Suri didn't flinch. She watched her father's final stand, not with the eyes of a grieving daughter, but with the eyes of a forensic auditor closing a case. She saw the betrayal, she heard the confession of the Golden Crane board members in the background, and she saw Ji-sung's face. Authentication successful. Welcome, Director Park. The jet stairs began to lower. The hum of the engine surged. There, Ji-sung gasped, moving toward the stairs. You have your truth. Now let's move. I have my truth, Suri said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. But you misunderstood the protocol, Ji-sung. The legacy proof doesn't just unlock the plane. It broadcasts it. The sirens were no longer a distant hum, they were a screaming wall of blue and red light reflecting off the rain-slicked runway. The Singapore police tactical units were breaching the airfield perimeter, their tires screeching as they formed a semicircle around the idling Gulf Stream. Ji-sung lunged for the stairs, his eyes fixed on the open cabin door. Suri, move. We're out of time. Suri stood perfectly still at the top of the stairs. She didn't reach out a hand to pull him up. Instead, she reached for the control panel just inside the doorway. I told you the file broadcasts, Ji-sung, she said, her voice carrying over the roar of the turbines. Right now, that video isn't just playing on this screen. It's being uploaded to every major news outlet in Asia and the encrypted servers of the Interpol task force. Your legacy proof just became the world's most watched confession. Ji-sung stopped, his foot on the first step. He looked at the police, then back at Suri. What are you doing? If the plane takes off without me, you're stealing a syndicate asset. They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. I'm not stealing it, Suri said, a faint, chilling smile touching her lips. I'm the new owner. While you were arguing with me at the safe, I used your biometric delay to re-register the Golden Cranes holding company under a new board of directors. A board of one. You took everything, Ji-sung whispered, the realization finally breaking him. He wasn't the desert viper anymore. He was a man standing in the rain with empty pockets and a digital death warrant. I didn't take everything, Suri corrected. She reached into her blazer and tossed his gold watch, the one he used to track his billions, down onto the wet asphalt. I left you your time. All 25 years to life of it. She hit the close command. The heavy hydraulic stairs began to retract, lifting Suri away from the man who had deleted her father. Through the closing gap, she watched Ji-sung fall to his knees as the tactical team swarmed the tarmac, their laser sights painting red dots across his chest. The Gulf Stream roared down the runway, the G-force pressing Suri into the butter-soft leather of the director's chair. She didn't look at the diamonds in the safe. She didn't look at the champagne. She opened the master ledger on the cabin's main screen and typed the final entry. Account name, Han Dae-young. Status, balanced. Net value, justice. She hit enter for the last time. The screen went dark, reflecting her own face, no longer a quiet mouse, but the architect of the most perfect audit in history. The ledger was closed. Park Ji-sung thought he was hiring an accountant to hide his sins. He didn't realize that in the digital age, a pen isn't mightier than the sword a keyboard is. The Golden Crane has fallen, and the quiet accountant has vanished into the clouds with a billion-dollar ghost. If you stayed until the final balance was struck, you are part of the 1% who know that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who's been underestimated. Subscribe to join the inner circle, and click the video on your screen right now to see the next reckoning. The audit never ends.